You and then you.
I'll wait.
When it grows back red and not gray. Who else? Yes, sir.
Talk about the regular training week.
Say again?
Talk about the regular training week.
All right, I post my routines and I film most of them. So Sundays are deadlifting days. I love deadlifting for just overall, what Lachlan Adair calls redlining, but just full brute power. I deadlift for volume. I'm doing 6 sets of 6, and then I add weight every week until I can no longer get that 6 sets of 6. Then I switch the exercise. So I deadlifted off the floor to 315, 6 sets of 6, and now I'm deadlifting off 2.5-inch blocks, and I'm probably 2 weeks away from hitting 315. And then I'm either going to switch to squats or go back to the floor and try to get the 405 for 6 sets of 6. Monday is speed day. So it's 60-70% of my 1 rep max, but it's an arm wrestling specific exercise. Right now I'm competing against a lot of top rollers, so I do a lot of multi-spinner pronating, a lot of towel pronating, a lot of stuff that Travis teaches where you grab that skinny little strap and you post it. So speed day is against weight, bands, and then if you watch my channel, I add a chain to it as well. So not only are you pulling the bands when you reverse it, which is, you know, a West Side Barbell, a dynamic effort day, but then when I hit, it also hits a chain. So you hit a spike at the end of it. So it's basically a plyometric at each end of it. Monday evenings is isometrics. So that's primarily a wrist wrench pulling against a chain, and I alternate between pulling pad to pad and corner to corner. I have a theory that in the future arm wrestlers will train primarily isometrics, because in an arm wrestling match there's not a lot of rep. You clamp your hand, maybe you get a partial wrist curl in, but you don't really rep your bicep, you don't rep your shoulders or your hands, but once it's locked in, you typically bend at your waist or bend back. So I think isometrics is going to be the predominant training in the future. It allows you to train at max or sub-max level, no soreness, because there's none of that concentric motion. You know, in an isometric, as soon as you let go, the force goes away, and it's that concentric motion which leads to all your soreness, which is why beginners have so much soreness, because they go to practice and people keep ripping them open. Once you got some strength, nobody rips you open in practice anymore, the soreness goes away, and you go, wow, I'm so strong, I'm not sore anymore. Yeah, you're also not getting beat up in practice. Which is another thing, do not rip your beginners apart when they come to practice. You need these guys coming every week. Tuesday morning is some sort of back row day, primarily pull-ups or bent over rows. I'm currently doing pull-ups on a great big bar that spins and swings primarily to develop cupping. Tuesday evening is JM press, max JM press day. So I've got 4 or 5 versions of the JM press. I work to a 1 rep max. Wednesday morning is max effort day for arm wrestling. Wednesday evening I take off. I used to preach that I've never seen an arm wrestler overtrain. And I don't know if I'm overtraining, but I do know I get sleep deprived towards Friday, so maybe that's over. So I take Wednesday night off. Thursday morning is back day again, and both my back days are primarily volume. Sets of 4 or 5, usually 4 to 6 sets. Back day is also kettlebells and abs. Train your abs standing up. You use your abs standing up, train them standing up. Laying on the floor doing crunches and all that stuff makes them sexy, but when you're arm wrestling you're wearing a shirt anyway. So, you know, train your abs standing up. That's Thursday morning. Thursday evening is isometrics again. So if I did pad to pad on Tuesday, it's corner to corner or peg to peg. And it's usually 4 or 5 sets, and I try to work up to what my 1 rep max is. So on a wrist wrench, peg to peg, the most I've ever done is 150 some pounds, and I can currently do an isometric. Isometrics are pulling against a stop. Grabbing a barbell and holding it half rep is not an isometric. All you're doing is preventing that bar from dropping slowly. That is an incredibly slow negative. When you do your isometrics, pull a light weight up against something hard so you are constantly contracting those muscles. I can do isometrics with a wrist wrench in the 110 to 120 pound range. And it's usually for a count of 3 to 7 seconds, depending on how I feel. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That means you're 120 pounds on the stack, and then
It's 120 pounds, and then you're pulling against a chain.
so the chain is at that stop. So
Correct. So if I'm pulling against a chain which has no give, if you do your isometrics against a nylon strap, it'll have stretch in it. So let's say I got 100 pounds on the wrist wrench and I pull against the chain. To keep that chain tight, you got to apply way more than 100 pounds to it. Because if you put anything less than 100 pounds, that chain will droop. A nylon strap, when you hook your pulleys up, if you hook your handles to your pulleys through a nylon strap, there's give in it and it will save your elbows a lot because you can blast into it. If you hook it up to a chain, that's brutal dead work. So if you're getting soreness in your arm wrestling training at home, switch the chains to a nylon strap. My handles are all tied to the pulley stack through a nylon strap, and a fairly long one. Yeah, so back to the isometrics. I'll pull that against a chain, and I'll just count 3 or 5. What all I'm trying to do is get full blast contraction, and then just hold it. And that's because I'm slow off go, and when I pull somebody who's super fast, I just lock everything up and I leave my hand kind of relaxed. So when they go, they're hitting into that whole muscle chain, which is just as rigid as I can make it. And I still lose go, but at least I lose it, before I'm pinned. That's Thursday night. Friday is volume, and I'm still experimenting with that. I'm trying to do 500 reps on whatever I'm weak at. So right now I'm weak pronating. Dave Chafee, when I pull Dave, I can get inside with him and I feel comfortable. And if we just pull palm to palm or elbow to elbow, I don't feel dominant, but I feel like I'm in that game. As soon as he does that, I'm not even competitive with him. So I'm trying to train this. So I do a lot of volume with this now. I'm trying to do 500 reps with this. After my JM presses, I finish it up with, basically I don't have dumbbells, but I put a towel through a plate and I just curl it this way on either side, and I keep adding weight to it. I'm doing 35-pound plates for like reps of 15. And that's when you can really determine the lopsidedness of my arms there, because even though I'm doing them alternating, it's like this one quits and this one keeps going, That's Friday morning. Friday evening is again some sort of rows for volume. So I stand at the table and I got a pulley machine, I'm either posting it up or supinating it. And then Saturday morning is JM press for volume. So I'm doing 9 sets of 10, but I vary the grip, I do a medium and a wide and a narrow grip JM press. If you learn anything here today, believe me, those JM presses will give you a new outlook on life if your elbows bother you, okay? You have to do them. I don't know if super heavy or super volume works. Do both, figure it out. But if you have any sort of elbow pain, do your JM presses. I found the narrow grip ones, specifically on an incline bench, work the best for me. Other people, depending on their style, like a very wide grip. So it kind of depends whether your elbows are hurting you more on the inside or on the outside. But those JM presses, this is something I know. Those JM presses will change your arm wrestling. You will, after several months, you will feel so much confident in positions that you probably really shouldn't be in. I've had super matches with several people in the last 12 months, and before the super matches, we're not real friends. After the super matches, we're kind of cordial to each other. And 3 of those folks that I had super matches with actually write me personal letters and said, thank you so much for telling me about JM presses. Okay. They say, I can now get into practice and be in ugly positions and just feel confident about the elbows. All right. It will make that elbow pain go away. All right. It will do them light. If you've already tore your elbows up and they hurt, it will rehab them. Once your elbows stop hurting, do heavy ones to make those elbows strong. There's a sign right at the door, and I quote it all the time. Louis Simmons says, weak things break. If your elbows hurt, you're breaking them. Make your elbows strong. Or don't arm wrestle ugly like I do and, take the force off your elbows. That's probably the smarter. You should learn that. Don't arm wrestle like me and Gabby do. Okay? Learn how to top roll. Travis has the most efficient way of getting through a tournament, It's fast. He wins fast or he loses fast. Yes, sir. And I'll come back to you.
Do you do any bench pressing or bench pressing?
I don't do any bench pressing. The JM press volume day, especially the narrow ones, will hit your shoulders, especially if you hang the bobbly weights on them and make that bar real unstable. Before I was doing super high volume JM presses, I was having trouble with my shoulders. I could tell my max effort day, my hand's always kind of weak, but I could feel it was my shoulder that was letting go. I wouldn't lose my hand, my elbow felt good, but when I leaned into it, I could feel my shoulder was letting loose. So I started doing dumbbell swings, and usually for sets of 20, I would do front, lateral, and rear, okay? I'm very scared about training shoulders. I would never put a barbell behind my head and do shoulder raises or anything like that. The shoulders are a complex muscle group. I don't know a lot about them, but you mess up your shoulder, they tend to be messed up for a long time. So train your shoulders gently. Once I started doing JM press for volume, I felt my shoulders definitely started feeling stronger, and I started developing more frontal shoulder growth. So I look stooped over and stuff. The front of my shoulders is significantly bigger than the back, but the way I pull, that feels good. My shoulders are not the weak point in my isometrics anymore, and I just attribute that primarily to the narrow grip JM presses with those weights swinging. Because when that bar's moving around, I feel it in my shoulder. I'm almost to the point now where my shoulders are holding me back on my JM presses, which is where I want to be, because it's not my elbows anymore.
This kind of say the same thing. Like, you do a lot more pulling volume than pushing volume. The only pushing you do is hand press, and you've got like 3 back days.
Yeah, I think your back is the foundation to your arm wrestling. Like running would be for boxing or something. I don't do a lot. I've never benched 400. I've never benched out of the mid 3s, okay? But my JM presses are coming. I'm almost at a 300-pound JM press, and I'll probably be at a 315 JM press this time next year. My JM press volume's coming way up. But I have a video coming up. Three exercises that I think people should reconsider doing is bench pressing, that heavy bicep curl, and the grippers. The bicep curls are sexy, and Iraqli can do like, I don't know if it's 100 kilograms or either, I think it was 100 kilograms. And a heavy bench is sexy as hell. I love seeing it, but there's a thing, that heavy bench, for one thing, when you're arm wrestling, you don't rep that chest. You lock your shoulder in. Whether you're top rolling or even if you're pressing, you're not using that chest to press. You're just using it to stabilize that shoulder. And if that shoulder's strong, you don't have to rely on that chest so much. Plus, if you got a lot of chest development, which some women can speak to primarily, if you're coming down and your chest is big, you got to back out to get below the table. So I wouldn't want a whole lot of mass on my chest if I was trying to specifically be a top level arm wrestler. All kinds of mass on your back, whether you're top rolling, hooking, dragging, your back supports all that. Your back's very important in supporting your bench press anyway. So even if you're gonna bench, you still need a very strong back to do that. So I would I myself don't bench. I haven't benched in years, but I JM press twice a week, you know, and almost to failure. I definitely recommend JM presses. Yes, sir.
It's pretty common for injuries to happen in competitions for beginners, but also for like experienced players. So do you have any advice for trying your best in a competition without injuries?
I've seen a few injuries, and it's usually beginners or women, and a lot of times it's women who are beginners, right? And there's this whole thing about, when I started, there weren't novice, beginners, semi-pro, and amateur classes. There was just the arm wrestling classes. But with the growth and the explosion of how popular the sport is, there is a lot of beginners coming into the sport, and a lot of times they get out of position and they get hurt. I've only had one guy break his arm pulling me, and it was a bizarre, I mean, we were sitting there like that, and this was at the Arnold's that time when they closed the Arnold's and we were all practicing at that bar. I had my left hand on his hand saying, look, what you want to do is this, and as soon as I touched his hand, his arm broke. He broke this one.
He had a destiny.
Yeah. I mean, he was one of these brute strong power guys, and I don't think he wanted to learn to arm wrestle. I think he just wanted to beat arm wrestlers. If you look at your hand, that you should be safe, except for shoulder injuries. The last 5 or 6 years, I've been seeing a lot more people complaining about tearing labrums and stuff. I'm not sure what's leading to that, but I see shoulder injuries are coming up pretty quickly in arm wrestling. I don't know if it's just the influx of beginners in that. That very well could be. We don't, even though the sport's thousands of years old, we haven't developed, you know, unified theories of arm wrestling yet, right? If you're in any other sport, if you're in boxing or powerlifting or football, there are canned training programs that have worked for years, and there's people constantly innovating them, but more often than not, somebody comes into arm wrestling and they either carry their bodybuilding philosophy with them, or they just go copy some powerlifting routine and then start, or more often than not, they ignore all that stuff and just make shit up when they come in. And I get a lot of text. Hi Todd, big fan, love your sport. I'm doing everything you're doing. I love how you're training, but this is what I do. And they proceed to list a bunch of things I've never heard of. You know? I go, yeah, I can't help you. I don't know what you're talking about. But there's a lot of room to innovate and make stuff up. But as a beginner, I tell the beginners that come to us, you know, find somebody you believe in, take their advice, don't take their routine, get some strength in it, and maybe don't jump into a competition until you've got a certain level of confidence. It would be far more valuable if you're 1 or 2 years into this sport, instead of going to 3 or 4 tournaments and testing yourself in the amateur class. Worse yet is when they pull amateurs and pros. So they don't have the confidence to pull the pro class, but they're gonna pull it after pulling the amateur classes, so they've already got the edge knocked off them and they're already winded, you know. They almost always get hurt in the amateur classes, and you're probably safer in the pro class, because if you've never arm wrestled before, and I know you haven't arm wrestled before, as soon as I grab a hold of you, I'm not gonna hurt you. 2 beginners are gonna hurt each other. But I would coach beginners to, instead of spending the money to go to 3 or 4 tournaments a year, reach out to people who have regular practices. Go to a practice where there's top level people at. Now you get to pull them multiple times. You get to ask them questions, right? And you get to try different things. And you go to a tournament and you paid your money, you know, and you want to win that t-shirt, all right? So plan A don't work, then you just try and win anyways, you know, and then you get hurt and now you're out for 7 or 8 months. It'd be far better to go to some high level practice, learn a few things until you start feeling good in practice, and then go pull in the pro class. If you're pulling a pro class, but they're not giving away any money, that's a very safe class for you to pull. If you're pulling an amateur class, and they're not giving away. Amateur classes are dangerous for anybody, you know. I think I went completely off. Did I answer your question? I don't, okay, because I can start over again if you want to re-ask it, because I don't know if I answered that. Yes, sir. Say again? I watched a lot of that on that, because I'm on an airplane a lot, so I watched a lot of the old strongmen, and I love that stuff. I think it's cool, but I'm not built for that. I am way too short to do any strongman type, and my hands are way too small. Those Atlas stones, we had them at the gym, and I could pick up the smallest one. I just couldn't. Those guys can grab around them and pick them up this way. Me, you know, I'm trying to squeeze them, you know. I think that stuff's cool. I think UFC's cool. I am completely not built for those sports. And I've gotten lucky in arm wrestling because I am probably the height and the build for probably a 180-pound class. If arm wrestling ever got to the level of sports like soccer or baseball or football where there was true dedicated professionals in it, I would have to compete in the 170, 180 class just based on my height, my arm length, and my hand size. But since arm wrestling is still fairly immature and you can still innovate and do a lot of stuff, you know, I can kind of hold my own at any weight class. And anybody can, if you're willing to take risks, focus on learning, seek excellence over victory, you know.
A little bit to that. What do you think of Dave Chafee, the sledgehammer training? I
used to do it. I got a sledgehammer with plates duct taped to it and tape every 2 inches. So I would train it. I'd train pronating, supinating, rising, and then I'd write down which handle I was. I don't do it anymore. It wasn't it wasn't helping me at the time. Because at the time, that wasn't where I was weak. I was weak in the arms, but that I got a sledgehammer just like that. It's sledgehammers. We used to have things called plate loaders, barbell wrist curls. Those are all very common beginning arm wrestling techniques, and beginners and all will benefit from that. I think after a while, you will develop what's specific to you. Off topic, but speaking of sledgehammers, I constantly get asked if I do online coaching or stuff like that. I say I won't do online coaching. I won't charge you for it. I'll give you my routine. I'll answer any questions you have. But for me to train you and you, right, I could give you the basic stuff, but with you guys having 2 different builds and experience level, I would train you specifically different than him. I can't do that through texts and emails, and I'm not going to watch videos of you training to do all that. You know, we're still at the point where you got to figure out where your weak points are and focus on them, right? A lot of the folks who do online training send the same workout routine to you and you and you. Well, that can't be right because you're all completely different trained, you know.
What advice did you give to the person today?
What I would, come up here, if you don't mind. Sure. So, he's tailor-made to beat me, right? So, he went into his top roll, but when he got it, oh man, don't pull so hard, just kidding. But when he top rolled me out, he got my hand and he held it here. But I'm still strong enough here to do that. Had he top rolled me here and turned me palm up, I probably couldn't have dug my arm out of that. Okay, that would have been your match. But it's easy for me to tell him that because I also know that. So the one thing I'm doing is keep my knuckles up, keep my knuckles up. I'm less worried about going to the losing position as keeping that knuckle up, all right? Now, other top rollers like Matt Mask and Marcio are a little bit better top roller than you. For them, I'm hitting backward. Not only do I want my knuckles up, I want to make sure I stay on this side of the pads, all right? I don't care being here, right? Because now we're both pulled, because if I'm here, he's also there, right? So now that top roller's hand is compromised and we're both pulling through our elbows, If it's an elbow on elbow match, I like my chances, all right? If it's hand to hand, I don't like my chances, okay? So how I would coach him was still knuckles high, probably top roll more like Travis would, that posting style, but get that palm up. If I'm here, there's a very rare person that's gonna dig their arm out of that, especially if he's sitting here and just sitting on it. His problem was, he got me there. I love the way Curtis pulls. He pulls like me, and I love that just bite your tongue and blast sideways. A year or two from now, if he stops benching and does more side pressure work, I think he'll surpass me. All right. His hand's kind of small for the weight class he's in, but the straps mitigate that. So, you know, if Curtis would pull, he's good at hooking, and he still likes to pull on his bicep some. But I think if he kept his wrist flat, right, planted that right foot, and tried to go inside this way. So whether I was trying to top roll him or carve in, if he was keeping his hand flat, pushing that towards the peg, that would have changed the whole tenor of that match. You know, but you know, I've only pulled the gentleman today. You know, if I pulled with them every single week, there might be other things, or I might be completely wrong. But that's how I would have coached them today. Yes, sir.
If you had to put peak Chatter or peak Arsene Lillian, would you do something different? Because I feel like as a hooker, like that's the hardest. Like a Jelly Chatter or Arsene Lillian was the hardest hooker.
Oh, Arsene. He was a bad dude. You know, he was an elbow fouling machine. And I pulled him in a year's time 3 or 4 times. And I could not handle that speed he had. And him and Rustum would grip, and they would grip so loose that my thumb would rattle around in their hand, and they would fire back, right? And Arsene would fire like that, and I couldn't, I never felt like I was in the match. Pulling Arsene always made me feel like I just flat didn't hear go. And the last time I pulled him, he was just cleaning my clock. He just bam, bam, bam. So he goes, well, I'm pulling the straps, and I go, sure, I think I'd already lost 5. When we got in that straps and he fired off, instead of me stopping the match there, we stopped like right there in the elbow. And I go, oh dude, oh man, if I could have gotten into the straps with Arsene, I would have felt a lot better. I did not know Jerry Carteret in his peak because I hadn't started arm wrestling then. But I like I said, a tall shoulder roller. I'm vulnerable to that. And we got a guy in Ohio that I can train with. And my advice to a tall shoulder roller is trust your elbow and trust your shoulder. Bully that center. Because if they come down, what you want to do is get their hand and just pull their hand. If they're pressing, you just want their hand outside their shoulder. And that goes away. If I could pull like Devin did and hold that hand up tall toward the center where they can't press when their forearms up. My problem is when I pull them, their forearm's kind of down already, so they're able to get that downward force, you know. I need to make sure that if they're gonna press into me, I want them pressing along the axis of this bone. I don't want to try to pull a shoulder roller out against my elbow joint. I want them shoving that elbow into the pad and then have me drag it out. That would be a timing thing, but if I was gonna pull Jerry again, I would lean way over to the center of the table and get all that right in front of him and then not even wait for go. As soon as I saw Jerry's shoulder or something move, I was just gonna go and try to pull that hand outside. I'll probably pick up 2 or 3 fouls in that match. But I only got to pin him once to be famous, you know? Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I know, I'm dying to know, it's a highly contentious issue, the items of it, the King's move. Are you for it, against it, did you ever use it, is it in your toolbox?
I have no problems with the King's move. When it first got hot, when George Zakowicz was doing it, we would practice it in South Carolina, and I would set up in it, and I'd say, okay, you ease into putting it. I couldn't do it. I didn't have the tolerance to do it. When Michael Todd started making it famous again, we were practicing it in Utah. I myself can't do it. I don't know if it's a flexibility issue or so, I don't know. I just can't feel right on it. The first time I ever felt it was when I pulled Devin, and I didn't know I was in the King's move. All I knew was that his hand was close to the pad, and I was 4 inches from being super famous. So I just kept hitting it, you know. After I watched that tape, I go, holy shit, man, I was not that far from being famous. I was like a decade away. I practiced with Michael Todd on it. It's, for me to defeat the King's move, I gotta make sure, if Michael Todd